Malcolm. Malcolm would snatch women's handbags for a living. He had become extremely proficient at it. After a few stays in Rikers Island Correctional Facility, he had picked up quite a few tricks from some of the other inmates. His crime of preference always remained snatching women's handbags, though. Malcolm was meticulous in picking out his targets and his locations. He knew that New York had a lot of locations where there were cameras, so he had to be very careful. Malcolm usually did 2 or 3 jobs a week to keep up his income. He liked to work under the cover of darkness on empty streets, and he would usually haunt the bus stops. Old and young women would be standing waiting for the bus, and some of them clutching their handbags. Malcolm would watch to see when they were most vulnerable. Sometimes they would move the bag from one arm to another if they had to wait a long time for the bus. When it didn't seem easy enough, though, Malcolm would walk up and act like he was waiting for the bus as well, but he would try not to let the women get a good look at his face. Train stations were one of his favorite spots, but so many had cameras and they were too crowded during normal hours, and he would have to wait until the wee hours of the morning to strike. Malcolm's mother would constantly question Malcolm about his whereabouts daily. She warned him that she was not going to put up her house to bail him out of jail if he ever went back. She begged him to get a normal job and earn an honest living. He lied and told her that he was working at a warehouse in Long Island City loading boxes. He would go out 3 days a week as if he was working, and he would come home late in the evening with money so his mother didn't press the issue. She only hoped that he was doing the right thing because he was her only child, and she loved him with all of her heart. Malcolm's mother's 75th birthday was coming up in a few days, and Malcolm wanted to make it special for her. He planned on getting her some flowers and candy, and he had his eye on a pretty gold necklace with diamonds in the jewelry store window. Malcolm knew that she would be so pleased that he bought her something with money that he had earned. When he got to the house, Malcolm's mother told him that her baby sister was coming to spend her birthday with them. She would be taking a bus from Detroit, and she would be there Friday. Her sister Desiree was the only other love in Malcolm's mother's life. After Malcolm's mother and father died, she took care of Desiree until she went off to college and got married and moved to Detroit. They talked on the phone every day, and they were as close now as they were when they were kids. Malcolm headed out for his Wednesday run, and his mother told him to have a nice night at work. Malcolm took his backpack with the lunch that his mother made him inside and waved goodbye to his mom. He took the train out to Astoria, Queens, and when he came out of the train station, he surveyed the area. He knew that his mark would be coming along in about 15 minutes, and it was already getting dark. He had followed her several times from her job at the hotel on Ditmars Boulevard. She would stop at the check-cashing place before heading to the bus stop, so he had a few blocks to grab the bag and race back to the train. She came out right on time and went straight to the check-cashing place. He watched across the street as she put the money in her handbag and snuggled it under her arm. It was about 6 blocks to the bus stop, and Malcolm crossed the street and came up behind her. She tried to walk faster, and she looked back once or twice, and Malcolm tried to act like he wasn't paying any attention to her. Then she decided to slow down and let him pass. Just as he got up to her, she stopped and faced him. She clutched her bag with 2 hands and waited for him to pass. Malcolm generally tried to avoid violence, but he remembered that one of the other inmates at Rikers Island told him that he would club any woman that resisted him taking their bag. Malcolm's plan was to act like he was passing by her and push the bag from under her arm and catch it as it fell and then run like hell. But the woman just stopped like she knew what he wanted. Malcolm reached for the bag, and the woman began to scream and clutch the bag even tighter. Malcolm pulled out his billy club and smashed it on the side of the woman's head, and she fell to the ground bleeding. Malcolm grabbed the bag and ran to the train, leaving the poor woman sobbing and bleeding on the ground. When Malcolm got off the train and went to a deserted spot to check his earnings, he was shocked when there was less than $30 in the bag. He looked at the check-cashing receipt, and he saw that the woman's check was over $1,000, and he realized that he must have missed her slipping it into her bra or her pocket. He never once thought about how hard that poor woman worked to get that money, getting out of her bed in any kind of weather trying to feed her family. Malcolm only thought now that he was going to have to get someone else so that he could get the things that he wanted for his mother's birthday. Friday came around quickly, and Malcolm's mother asked, "Why are you looking so sad, baby? I'm cooking some of your favorite food for this special weekend, you know." Malcolm responded, "Oh, it's nothing, Ma. Just getting ready to go out and work, and I don't feel much like it." "Well, why don't you just call in sick tonight, baby? You know my birthday's tomorrow, and you don't want to push yourself too hard," said Malcolm's mother. "No, I've got to go tonight, Ma. I'll be all right," said Malcolm, and he went outside. Malcolm didn't have a plan tonight, and he didn't have a mark. He was going to have to watch out for cameras and just try to get someone that looked like they had money. He knew that he would have to get the money for his mother's presents by the morning, or it would be too late. There was a bus depot not far from Malcolm's house, and he went down close to the depot and stood in a dark doorway watching to see who passed by. As the buses arrived, different groups of people walked down the long, lonely block. The last stragglers would come out after the crowds left. Finally, Malcolm saw his opportunity. Everyone had left, and there was one woman walking down the block alone with a very expensive-looking handbag. She looked like she was lost, so Malcolm circled around behind her. He wasn't going to risk being caught so close to his house, so he took out his billy club and crept right up behind the woman. Malcolm swung as hard as he could, and he bashed the back of the woman's skull so hard that her head almost burst open. She fell face first to the ground, and Malcolm snatched the bag. He ran a little ways up the block, and he opened the bag and found $600 in cash inside. He dropped the bag and took off. The next morning, Malcolm got up early and went to the jewelry store and got the necklace that he wanted for his mom, and the flowers and the candy. When he got home and opened the door, he found the NYPD detectives inside standing by his mother, and she was crying her eyes out. "What is it, Mom?" shouted Malcolm. "Someone killed my baby sister, Desiree, a few blocks away from here. They found that special handbag that I gave her 20 years ago not far from her body. Whoever it was bashed her skull in," said Malcolm's mom, sobbing uncontrollably. Just then one of the detectives looked at Malcolm's sneakers and asked, "How did you get that blood on your shoes, young man? That is blood, isn't it?" Malcolm had stepped in the blood running away, and he didn't realize that he hadn't cleaned it off his shoes. When he put them on in the morning, he was in such a rush that he didn't pay much attention. He knew he was caught, and the detectives were waiting for the fingerprints to be identified from the bag, so it was a matter of time. Malcolm had killed his own aunt. 3 weeks later, while Malcolm was sitting in a cell in Rikers Island, one of the corrections officers came to him and said, "Bad news, kid. Your mom died last night." The people that were there with her said that they believed she died of a broken heart. She kept saying that she lost the two most precious possessions that she ever had. She was just sitting in a chair with some of her neighbors, and they thought she was asleep. She was rocking back and forth in her chair, clutching her sister's handbag.